Some people, they have really positive environments and supportive environments with their family. Some people have the total opposite. The vast majority of clients that I've worked with had families that weren't particularly supportive. I'm lucky to have a supportive family. My mom supports what I do. Especially now after I cleaned up a lot of the site. But a lot of guys don't have that. So, especially if you're from a traditional background, I've had clients who are of North American, but they're of Indian and Asian ethnicity, and that's been a big struggle for those guys. Is their parents wanted them to be doctor or a lawyer, and in most cases with my clients, it was like doctor. You can't even go get an MBA or something. That's going to cause a problem. So naturally, when you're raised in that kind of environment, and there's so much shame attached to, not doing what your parents want, it makes it very difficult for you to follow your own inspiration and live your life. But the reality is which one do you want more? Do you want to live for other people's social idealisms, or do you want to live for what truly inspires you? And if you truly want to live for what inspires you, and you don't want to sacrifice your happiness to avoid some shame, like so many people do, then you have to make those choices and be willing to have those conversations. Now, I'm not going to tell you if you used to watch Stefan Molyneux, he was always telling people to defoo from their family, which means no contact. Obviously, if you had some crazy traumatic childhood of a lot of abuse, I think that's the right move. But I think for most people, people with normal-ish childhoods who had, some difficulties with the family, I think, and I'm not a guilt or shame guy, but I think there's an obligation to a degree to your parents, especially your mom. She had created you. You came out of her body at great cost to her. Can't repay that. It would be hard for me, to be able to try and justify that, especially when you're trying to be accountable, you're trying to be a man, you're trying to, do things the right way and be a stand-up guy. So I think you do have a responsibility to your parents, but it certainly could be a situation where you can have less contact, and you could have more conversations where you stand up for yourself despite the cost, knowing that, hey, I'm not willing to live a life of unfulfillment. As I said, luckily I've had, I have a supportive family, although there were definitely some conversations in there. It was difficult for me to move away from Toronto. I did and do feel guilty about it to a degree. And I'm looking on, finding solutions to that to be able to spend at least 3 or 4 months a year with my mom. But ultimately I went on to fulfill my mission, and like I said, I do have a supportive environment, but if you don't, then that's something that you need to get a handle on. And I think it's about having those uncomfortable conversations, and if they're really pressing up on you, what they're saying is that your happiness isn't important. What's happy is that you do what we say. You're usually coming from a shame-based family, meaning that they're ashamed themselves of not living the social idealisms. What would the neighbors think? What would your cousins think? What would, they have that imaginary audience deeply ingrained in their head, and they're trying to impose that on you, and they think that's the right thing to do. And I definitely don't. I think that there's an obligation to your parents, but ultimately, it was God that created you. You're not owned by your parents. You didn't ask to be born. You were brought into this world, and you deserve to have high quality of life. And if you want to be able to get your head around that a bit more, just think about it like, let's say you have some kids of your own. Do you really expect that you can shame them your whole life, and that they should live exactly according to how you want them to live, and that's good parenting, and that What matters is what the neighbors and your cousins and your grandparents think, and you know, to expect to have a close relationship with those kids. That's the last thing that I want to do. If I do choose to have kids, my number one goal is that they're going to be happy and healthy, and that they will be able to do whatever the fuck they want in life, while being able to make a good living out of that, and I'll support them in that 100%. And I think that's how kids should be raised. So, you know, start to look at it from that perspective. But to get deeper into this, dude, it even comes down to, you know, your neighbors, your landlord. You know, if you've got a landlord that's not paying, that's forgetting to pay the water bill, the heating bill, it's causing you problems. If you've got noisy neighbors like I do, it's great here for 3 months until these neighbors moved in. They've got a dog, they've got kids running around from 8 p.m. till midnight. This has been a problem for me across the board. I spent a lot of time in Asia. You know, I lived in the Philippines, I lived in Thailand for a while. I mean, Eastern Europe now, and second to third world countries, has been a problem. But I'm sure it's a problem in Toronto. I didn't have much of a problem. But it's not just the neighbors. There'll be random drilling in the building. And wherever I go, it seems to follow me, to the point where when my lease expires, because there's no seafront views over where I'm at, I'm probably going to get a penthouse, a duplex, so that there's no one directly below me or above me or to the side of me, so I can't hear drilling above me, beside me, and beside me, which is sometimes what I'm hearing, especially frustrating if I'm trying to make a video. And this was an apartment that was great when I moved in. I had no neighbors. And then both of them moved in, started renovating, and I feel like I live in a construction zone. My elevator's filled with workmen. They smoke cigarettes inside. There's bags of sand everywhere. The lights are up. I don't even know what's going on here. Okay, I feel like I should be getting paid to live in here, you know, and be carrying around, you know, construction bags myself. Like, that's what I feel like. I'm in a job site. Okay, and this is one of the nicer buildings in a nicer area. So these have been a big source of stress, and then there's construction out in the street. So who's the source of stress? The workmen, the construction workers, the people next door, their dog, their kids, the guys in the building doing the drilling. It's specific people, you know. I can point them out in a lineup. I know exactly what they look like. To the point where I'm ready to hop in a penthouse 2 stories just for me, just to solve that fucking problem, and have it be on the 14th floor, knowing that, like, hey, I probably can't get rid of the street construction noise and some of the honking, at least in my current environment. But if I'm high enough up, it's going to be relatively, you know, not too loud. And of course, I've got my construction earmuffs, which I always recommend to you guys, the Optim 3M earmuffs. I have those on every time I'm writing a sketch for a video, anytime I'm doing projects. Those are my babies. If you're planning on going to the second, third world, I think it's important. If you want to watch more on this, check out my article and video, how to rent a condo or an apartment. Ideally, you've got something sea view, or you've got a house that's far away from people. But even a house in a quiet suburb, you could still have problems with your neighbors, in the sense that, you know, you see them pulling out of their car every day, and maybe they're living sort of a traditional family life, and you're a bachelor, and you know, you've got your lady friends coming over, and you feel like you're being judged, or the woman next door is always poking her head in and trying to get you to do something for Halloween, or trying to get you to come to the PTA bake sale, or trying to get you come to some of that other stuff that maybe you're not too interested in. You feel like you're being suppressed and being judged by these neighbors, and, you know, you're not fitting in because you don't have 2.2 kids and you know, a Prius, an environmentally friendly electric car, or whatever it is. But that sounds maybe like a small thing, but that might be weighing on you, right? You might recognize that, hey, that actually does bother me. I feel compressed and constricted within my own environment, instead of being able to be free and liberated. And even though those people aren't around me a lot, you know, because they're in such close proximity, that they're staying with me in my imaginary audience. Okay.